So a lot has made the headlines, for the better part of last week and the beginning of this week. Today is Monday, of course. And when it comes to, the governance of this country, right from the country's economy, the latest debate was that of the Judiciary, the meeting that the president had with, Chief Justice Martha Koome. And of course, that ruling, the two crucial court rulings that were given last week. We're talking about the housing levy and the deployment of police officers to Haiti. The court gave an important ruling on that. And of course, the country's economy, where we're heading as a country. We've given you a story that had been filed by my colleague Calvin Yakundi, just saying that, Kenyans are being warned about, digging deeper into their pockets if we are supposed to pay our debt as a country right on time. But what is the way forward as a country for you and me? Tonight on KTN Primetime News, I have a balanced panel. And when I'm talking about a balanced panel, I totally mean that. Having a governance expert on the board, having an advocate on the board, and also the political class represented. And let me begin with the lady we have on my immediate right is nominated senator under the UDA ticket. That is Esther Okenyuri. Asante sana Mheshimiwa for joining us tonight on KTN News.
Thank you very much. And
seated next to the senator is none other than Evans Ogada, an advocate, not a new face. Here in the country, let me not say in KTN News, but here in the country, because when we're talking about the BBI case that was taken to the court, he was one of the people who were there in that court case. So clearly not a new face here in the country. And of course, Dr. Harun Hassan. Again, you're not new here on KTN News. We've had you before. Yeah, so he's a leadership and governance expert. So that's why I'm telling you, it is a balanced panel from the leadership of Parliament in terms of the political class, the advocates along the corridors of justice, and also leadership and governance expert, well represented. But let me begin with the Senator Okenyuri. What would you make of this whole politics that we are witnessing here in the country, right from the meeting of the meeting that the president had, to the court rulings that were given, and of course the country's economy?
First, I would wish to begin by saying that, especially on the economy, we've made quite a good number of progresses. The country has recorded a huge amount of foreign direct investment, which is not being reported. And the president has been on the forefront saying we do not want to dig deeper. In fact, this administration has not been doing what the previous regime is doing. KRA has increased their number of collections compared to what the past regime has been doing. Coming back to whatever we've been seeing between the judiciary and the executive, sometimes I say lawyers and judges assume law is meant for them. Law is also meant for the people. That's when I'm speaking as a representative of the people and from the law-making angle. So let's not also look at it like it's a conversation between lawyers and judges. The law should also protect the people. And that's why people who have no capacity to hire lawyers represent them in court look upon the law to defend them. I'm actually happy about the ruling that was done by the court. When the court says, okay, why are you targeting only guys who are employed? We have guys in the informal sector who are making a lot of money and you're not going for them. So this time it's giving leeway for government to go for such people. Why then would it be a bad thing? And as the Kenya Kwanza administration, on where we feel dissatisfied, we'll still appeal, but within the law, because we respect the law. And when the conversation was there between the Chief Justice and the President and all the other persons who are in that meeting, I don't think it was about making them bend and accommodate whatever government wanted. You can see from the rulings that we've had this week, that shows they still have room to rule in whichever manner they deem fit, but within the law. But at the same time, excesses within that system must also be questioned. Because what makes the judiciary feel they can work alone, you just can't work alone. Working independently also means having a good relationship with other arms of government. Right now, the parliament will make laws, and even when those laws might not be popular to one side, we wouldn't say that one arm of the government will not criticize it. That's why Parliament will even summon cabinet secretaries to appear in the House and also respond to queries we feel are not of either of benefit or we need clarity. At that point, the executive will not say they're not answerable to Parliament.
All right.
So you'll not be able to do that if you do not have a good relationship with all these arms. And no one should feel like they can work without whatever they are doing being checked.
Right.
Checking the excesses within a particular arm doesn't mean you don't support them. It just in a bid to create a good relationship so that at the end of the day, you realize the general mandate, because all these arms are yet to serve citizens in one way or another. The executive implementing whatever functions required of them, the legislature doing the same, and the judiciary protecting the people by following the law.
All right. I like your explanation, Senator, but then Dr. Hassan, it begs the question, you know, from what Senator is saying is that they welcome the court ruling, you know, as the Kenya Kwanza regime, but at the same time, we saw threats from the same Kenya Kwanza regime, members of parliament allied to that, you know, to the KK government, saying that we are going to actually cut, you know, we're going to cut down the budget of the judiciary.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think Senator has put it very well, and if it goes that way, the way she has put it, I think we will have been far in terms of leadership and governance of the current system. However, there are a number of things that are not right in terms of governance. Just over the weekend, you find the president and the leader of the majority in Meru clearly saying that we will never respect or honor any court rulings that will bar them to deliver their desired plan. And then Ichungwa jumps up and says that indeed, Mr. President, we will going to deal with them. And that is not the way civilized society governs their institutions. We are ruled by the Constitution, the noble Constitution that we took and took an oath against it in 2010, which says that Kenya will be governed by 3 arms of government. The 3 arms of government all will be independent and interdependent. I mean, independence means in terms of delivering their mandate, they become independent. In terms of resource and resource allocations, in terms of resource sharing, and in terms of moving the government agenda, or rather the citizens' agenda, they are interdependent. For example, if budgeting process is structured in our budgeting process is structured in a manner that the executive prepares the budget, allocates all arms of the government, and then present it to Parliament. Parliament debate over it and allocate those, approves those allocations. That way, they are able to carry on their mandates that has, that are given to them by the Constitution. Judiciary plays in a very unique way in terms of our governance. Our judiciary is independent as an institution. It is independent as a judge. One magistrate or a judge is independent in his own way of addressing issues related to legal issues within the judiciary. But when the executive, which is mandated to provide support to judiciary for them to implement their service, funding allocation to judiciary, and yet they threaten the judiciary, then the judiciary will be compromised in terms of delivering their service.
Right.
So the challenge, the biggest challenge we have is that as much as a very good thing is happening within the Kenya Kwanza government, we see again a phenomenon in which judiciary is being attacked in a rallies, political rallies. And of course, the government at the moment, where, from what we have seen over the weekend, have gone back to campaign mode, right, other than actually service delivery. And of course, and their campaigns are hitting direct on judiciary. And therefore, there is this uncertainty which is coming up. If actually, as Mheshimiwa has said, those rulings that were made were in favor of the government, us as a citizen of this country will have had a lot of questions in our mind that judiciary has been threatened and therefore they are not able to deliver their mandate based on the way they are expected to do by law. Therefore, this has a bit relieved the tension
that was there.
That was there. But again, the threat is still now extended after there was a discussion which actually was not called for.
Okay.
The discussion that they had in the
We will
State
actually
House.
hold on to your thought, Dr. Hassan. We shall be getting into that part of the discussion, the meeting that was held between, you know, the judiciary and the executive. But then let me bring in Wakili. The aspect of, I'd just like to pick your mind on this because you are a lawyer. You are able to tell us whether the president has been getting the correct legal advice. Because we have seen him lose some of the cases at the court, and the court saying that the law was not followed, like the housing levy there was no legal framework, you know, and the Haiti case, you know, the law, the constitution was not followed. What would you take of the sort of legal advice that the president is getting?
Well, Brenda, good evening. Thank you very much. When you keep hitting your head against a wall and you do it repeatedly, you need to ask yourself what is wrong. Because if you keep hitting your head against the wall, you're certainly going to end up with periodic migraines. It's a really sad state of affairs that the court, the judiciary, has to correct some of these decisions and policies that are being made by the executive and other quarters. The problem is not with the judiciary per se, because if you're not satisfied with what one court says, you have the leeway to go up higher and get that corrected. So the question is, what personnel are you arming yourselves with? The majesty of the law and the importance of the law for us is it is able to achieve what blood and iron was unable to get. So we have to make the conscious decision whether we want to be a country that abides by the rule of law or we are going to use strong-arm tactics. So the rhetoric, the bellicose and ignorant statements we hear from political quarters, threatening judges, it's really beyond the pale. Judges need to be called to account when they go off the mark. That is okay, but do it using civil language. You cannot insult judges, making some insinuations that are not founded, and then expect you to have the confidence of investors, have the respect of international partners, and generally instill confidence in the judiciary among the citizenry. So if you have any iota of evidence against any judge or judicial officer, the channels are available. Table them the same evidence before the Judicial Service Commission. Please, we have the police investigative arms of the state. Let that be taken there, deal with it. But the rhetoric only serves to undermine the rule of law and the appearance of the rule of law in this country.
All right. And Senator, you know, I really like what Wakili has said. You know, the rule of law has to apply. And there's that respect that has to be there between the judiciary and the executive, you know, the three arms of government, the executive, the legislator, you know, just the three arms of the government. And that is what we are seeing that's lacking, just from my understanding from what Wakili is trying to say. So what would you make of when the president meets the Chief Justice and says, I have, I will disburse this millions of shillings for employment of judges, yet the budget-making process lies with that mandate is with Parliament.
One thing you need to know, government is an organic body. It can't function when you say, okay, absolute separation really can't happen if you want government to function effectively and deliver their mandate. Mm-hmm. So if you say, yes, budget-making process happens in Parliament, but you also need the goodwill from that end. And if you remember the president, when he was campaigning for presidency as a deputy president, one of his key commitments once he ascended to office was to ensure he continues supporting the judiciary to be autonomous financially, mm-hmm. which he's just doing. When you call the judiciary to discuss with them matters which already are happening, I do not see why you should make headlines as for it to be news.
So for you, it was okay for the president to meet
It's a good thing because, as I said, government is organic. Absolute separation cannot happen. For a good working relationship, you need all these three arms of government to work closely. And if you say, okay, the judiciary is just going to work on their own, then how do they even have a conversation on some of the issues which need talking? But
Senator, the timing. But Senator, the timing of this meeting is what raised eyebrows.
Remember also,
because here we have your party leader mm-hmm. throwing punches mm-hmm. at the judiciary instead of going through the JSC, the Judicial Service Commission. If you mm-hmm. have a complaint against a judge, go use the right channel. He throws punches at the judiciary. Then the next thing we are seeing, it's a meeting.
Then we shouldn't also have chief justices who are coming to the media to ask for budget allocation through the media, if that's what you're trying to argue.
Allocation of the budget. The
yes.
the judiciary is expected to get its budget, what it is supposed to get. When they see that this is not coming forth, it is okay for them to come out and talk about it.
Why is it okay for them to come and talk about it and not okay for the executive to also call them for a meeting to discuss such issues?
But you see the meeting, Senator, before I go to Dr. Mm-hmm. Hassan, the bone of contention here for Kenyans and also for lawyers, and that is why the LSK mm-hmm. called for, that peaceful protest, if I may put it that way. Mm-hmm. Wakili, I may put it that way. It was a yes. peaceful protest by, the Law Society of Kenya, where you're a member.
As allowed by the Constitution.
As allowed by the Constitution. Mm-hmm. It was punches thrown at the judiciary, and then mm-hmm. comes in the meeting.
And that's why when I began, I actually said sometimes I respect the legal profession, yes. Sometimes lawyers and judges assume the law is just meant for them. The law is also meant for members of the public. Look at this case. Affordable housing is a good baby. When you actually want to rubbish it completely, this is a baby who's bathing. If it's dirty water, please suggest ways we can change the water. But you do not say, okay, let's dismantle the whole basin and throw out the baby just because people feel our model of doing it does not suit their proposal. So what I'm actually saying, I do not see why it's wrong for the executive to call the judiciary for a discussion, mm-hmm. whereas it is right for members of the judiciary to come and address media calling for budget allocations. But when the executive does it, it's a wrong thing.
Dr. Hassan.
I think you have asked enough questions in regards to the same. There's one point that needs to be noted, mm-hmm. which is the circumstances that led to that meeting mm-hmm. is what is very crucial for us to know. Mm-hmm. This is when the president accused the judiciary of being corrupt and being used by opposition. Further, the deputy president pointed out specific judge mm-hmm. and threatened, I'll use the word threatened, because he said we'll move that judge out of the office. That's a threat. Mm-hmm. Therefore, the avenues that were available to address the issues that has been raised in that particular public gathering are very clear in the Constitution. We have arms of governments that taxpayers are paying their money every month. Resources are heading there that are mandated to carry out those complaints that were made public. An example you mentioned, JSC. The second one is EACC. If any judge is corrupt and you have evidence against him, just report to EACC. EACC will go to take the necessary steps to bring that specific judicial staff to book. We have the Director of Public Prosecution, whose job is to investigate, prosecute any criminal. We have DCI who are mandated to investigate. And therefore, why Mheshimiwa is trying to avoid the discussion and saying why judiciary should ask for budgetary on air, and yet when the executive says something on air, it becomes headline. Yes, indeed, it becomes headline because judiciary could only ask for money, but that was not money. Again, in the meeting, you go for a meeting to discuss issues related to corruption, and then you are told the outcome of that meeting had the following allocation for judiciary. Why was it necessary after those discussions? It was necessary to allocate judiciary resources that by law, by constitution, they are supposed to be allocated for them to do their to deliver their services to Kenyans. So by any means, it was not called for.
So Dr. Hassan, let me ask you, as I bring in Wakili, in a minute as respond to this question, do you think after that meeting, it was necessary for, okay, let me not put it necessary. Like, do you think the president should have come out and apologized to the judiciary? And do you think that the CJ should have come out and said, this is what, okay, State House has given, this was the outcome of the meeting, but this is now our statement?
The nature of our leadership does not accept apologies. For the years that I have lived, nobody has ever apologized. And I can see Mheshimiwa is smiling because she knows that. And therefore, let me not go there.
Okay.
I don't think if we dwell on something which is not forthcoming. Unfortunately, no leader has ever apologized in this nation. So for as long as I have got reasons to logically reason in this nation.
All right.
And therefore, the best practice would have been actually not only apologizing, but at least in a modern society, Western countries, people even leave the office for just doing that. I mean, you remember the Prime Minister of UK who just resigned just because a small issues were mentioned against him, utterances he did in one of the restaurants, and someone picked it as an issue, and therefore he had to step out of his office. This does not come in our setup. All right. And therefore, let's not dwell on apology.
All right.
You remember, I don't want to point out previous leaders, but you remember one of the leaders say, so as long as I live, I will never apologize. And I cannot leave any office. I will never resign. I will not resign. Yeah. These are the rhythmic culture that we are used to. And therefore, we don't want to go that side. What we want to go these days, what we want to look at is that the beautiful constitution that we have all picked up 2010, we must be followed to the latter.
All right. And Wakili, let's now shift our focus to legal matters when it comes to this housing levy, and this will also need the input of the senator. You know, the aspect of public participation versus the court ruling on the housing levy. The court pronounced that the housing levy was unconstitutional. There was no legal framework, meaning our taxes were collected illegally. That is my understanding. Until there, I'm correct.
Yes.
In terms of the law.
Yes.
I'm a good law student. But we are seeing public participation still being carried out, you know, because they're talking about coming up with the Housing Funds Act. But the question is, what would be the fate of all these processes legally?
Well, the High Court decision, the three-judge bench at the High Court, Justice Majanja, Justice Meoli, Justice Mugambi, established that what was done before with the housing levy was unconstitutional for the reasons they identified, emphasizing on the salaried, formally employed persons, leaving out those who are not formally employed. The reasons are well articulated. Again, there was no law, and the High Court went to great lengths to pick out the problems. Now, what does the government do? While this matter was being canvassed at the Court of Appeal, the government goes and introduces a fresh bill in the House, and they go about conducting
public participation.
What they call public participation. And now that the good senator is here, and I'm going to say this boldly and without apologies, public participation is not a favor. And direct democracy, where we go elect these politicians and they think they are small gods or small kings and queens over us, that's not the only form of democracy under the Constitution. If I had time here, I will go through the essence of public participation. Public participation is supposed to narrow the gap between the problems we face with direct democracy, whereby you go and vote and forget about the civic life for 5 years. The politician goes and does as they want. Public participation is supposed to infuse some commitment, some re-engagement with the citizen, so that you go, talk to the citizen, get their input. That input has to impact decision-making. And therefore, it is not a perfunctory exercise to be done at the whims of politicians. And when the courts tell them that this is wrong, they think that going and addressing some public rally, that is public participation. It is wrong. Yes.
But then, Wakili, as I bring in Senator in a minute, as you're speaking, there's lack of law. Like, we don't have a law that stipulates exactly what public participation is and what public participation entails, which has created a loophole on how public participation needs to be conducted.
Brenda, public participation is fodder properly for the court. Senator will not agree with that, but this is the law, constitutional law. The courts are the proper locus to interpret and articulate what public participation means. Insofar as public participation is concerned, we have the BAT case from the Supreme Court. The court laid down the guidelines for what public participation entails. One better, let them read ex parte Gakuru. Justice George Vincent Odunga articulates what public participation should be. They read again what Justice Professor Joel Ngugi said in the BBI case, what is public participation. Those are principles that should guide, not you as politician X or Y standing in some market rally, making noise and calling that public participation. No.
All right, Senator, you are actually...
yes, even before you ask, I want to agree with what you just talked about on
lack
public
of law
participation. Yes. Because even now you can't quantify what amounts to public participation. Because now a member of parliament or someone might actually even come up with a list and say, we already agree this is what we are going to do as a community, and the project is rolled out. How do you quantify? How do you even establish if indeed the people on that list are the ones who showed up? It's neither here or there. The same issue we are having with civic education, several years down the line from when county governments came to place, we've not had civic education implemented in counties. So you expect a member of the public to participate in something they first of all do not even understand. Because I believe an informed citizenry is able to make right decisions even on proposals brought to them by their government or by their elected representatives. So maybe I would just say at that point, a project like affordable housing that you're stating very well, housing levy was even introduced in the past regime. The Azimio coalition themselves in their campaign promised to effect it. What me, as a representative of the people, would be wanting to hear is how to implement it better, not throwing it away altogether, because all these regimes have had this, all those jobs which are being created out of the affordable housing program. Those are not issues you can just wish away through a court order. And when such things are called out, I don't see the problem.
But then, Senator, but then Wakili just educate me on this. You call it lacuna in law, like when it's ambiguous, like there's something missing, like it's open-ended.
You're sugarcoating it. There is no law.
There is no law.
There is
okay,
no law.
I should just put there is no law.
There is no taxation without law. That's a maximum law.
Okay, so Senator, you know, we all agree that lack of law on what exactly public participation is and what it needs to entail is what has created that loophole on how public participation should be conducted. So from where you sit, what is your understanding of this public participation? And how it should be done?
Like I just mentioned to you, you can't even quantify that, because if today as a member of parliament I decided go get a list and say people in Bomachoge Borabu constituency have decided this is the program we are going to do, how do you quantify, how do you substantiate?
So can we say that probably that is what might have happened with this housing?
I wouldn't say that, because this housing levy issue was actually passed by the previous regime in 2019. So I don't know why now it's sounding like a new thing. The Azimio coalition themselves, when they were campaigning, they formalized and said they were actually going to continue with the affordable housing issue, because who in this country wouldn't want to have people stay in affordable houses?
Hold on.
Create jobs for such kind of people.
Okay, just gentlemen, just hold on. Let Senator finish.
Okay, they're interjecting before I even finish. So I'm actually saying what I would want to hear from those who are against the whole issue of creating jobs out of affordable housing is an alternative, but you cannot just throw away the baby because the water is dirty. Change the water then.
We change the water.
Right.
And that water is being changed by is what the appellate court changed temporarily.
And we actually said we are going to stick within the law, appeal, and proceed with that process as required.
All right. And that is why I asked Wakili, like, what would be the fate of all these processes legally? Can I give Dr. Hassan then you?
There's something that was factually not correct here, that what we have and what is being challenged in court emanates from the last regime. The Finance Act 2023 is responsible for creating this problem that was impeached in court. What did that act do? It purported to amend the Employment Act and create a fund called the Affordable Housing Fund within that act, and that was found unconstitutional. What the court said, and the decision by Justice Majanja read out, is that you cannot create an affordable housing fund in the manner that was tried to be created within the Finance Act 2023. So it is not correct to say that it was created in the former regime. Another thing that has to be corrected, that we don't have guidance as to what public participation is. G.V. Odunga, expert Gekuru, quantitative and qualitative aspects of public participation. Go educate the public, let them appreciate what they're dealing with, let them give you input, and that input has to be taken into consideration.
All right.
The educating the public is not there. That's the civic education I'm talking about. More than 10 years down the line, we do not have a framework on how civic education should be conducted in this country.
All right, Senator. Dr. Hassan?
Yes, I just want to salvage Senator on the perspective of what is giving them this challenge. You know, I can't put it much better than what our senior counsel has done it. But there's a challenge. The challenge that the government is facing is that they are trying to initiate projects without establishing proper framework that will going to guide the implementation of specific projects that they are bringing out. The Kenya Kwanza government rushed into the house levy issue when they will have used our legal experts to generate processes and systems and necessary legal framework that will going to support their ideas. Until then, they shouldn't have rushed on it. What they did is that they initiated a levy, they started implementing it, and now retrospectively now they are now creating the law that will going to protect this. Now already Kenyans who have taken the matter before the court had an issue that is already questionable. So the bottom line is that in terms of better governance, one thing that they needed to do is that they need to first identify their project, establish legal framework that will going to be guiding the whole process, and ensure that this legal framework go through the normal law-making process.
Right.
Once that is finalized by the legal team that understands much better than any other person in terms of legalizing the process, then they are able to take it there. Judiciary do interpret what has been already formulated in Parliament. They do not actually come with their own law. They look at the Constitution. What does the Constitution say? Are there laws that has been formulated in Parliament that is going against the Constitution? Yes, this is unconstitutional. Are there things that has been made, or rather executive doing things that are unlawful? Yes, because there are no legal frameworks that support that specific agenda. And therefore, Senator, the only thing I will have asked the executive to do is that let them not be in a rush, because the process of reversing a lot of things that are taken through rush will be more expensive than actually taking your time in establishing the necessary framework that will support your idea. The ideas are very brilliant. Nobody will come against the low housing project. But the issue is, how does that, that process, how was it established? You already hear a lot of holes have been poked in it, in that there was no framework to support. There are other people who have been left out. There are special people, some people who are already 55 years old in service. They already have their own houses. They have already established
and you're being forced to get an affordable.
Being forced to get affordable house. For heaven's sake, you don't need a house at 55 years. These 5 years remaining before you retire, you have already established yourself. There are young generation who are starting life. Let's see how that process can be fixed within that framework, so that we benefit people who are trying to build the society.
All right. Now, Akili.
By the way, Brenda, in a line, remember the meeting that we have been talking about between the CJ and the president? It's the CJ who called for that meeting.
Yeah, it is the CJ who called for that meeting, yes. Yes, it is.
And the meeting between those two has not affected. You can see the judgment they gave the other day.
So it's a way of what I'm trying to get, what you're saying, Senator, is that despite that meeting, the meeting happened, but the rulings that were given...
It's not influenced the courts in any way.
All right. So, Wakili, we would like to know money that was collected. There was no legal framework. When that money was being collected, it was unconstitutional. So, and Kenyans have been asking, how do we get our money back? So if we are to get our money back, refunded, if it's done, it's under which law and who will be accountable for that refund?
Let me start with that first. It is out there in public domain that counsel representing Kenya Revenue Authority and her colleague Senator Murugara, they were in court. They pledged that if a declaration of unconstitutionality was established, the government was ready to refund the money. That is okay. That is what they said. From the legal premise, McFoy, the case called McFoy, anything that is not firmed in law is utterly useless. It is void, and void from the beginning. And therefore, if you collected on the basis of no law. You have no legal basis to withhold that money. So government should find mechanisms of reconciling the books and dealing with that. It's not for me to advise them. They played on the floor of the court that will be given back.
But you know, Akili, the question is under which law and who will be accountable?
If you take my money and you have no basis for taking the money, that does not make that my money. I ought to give it, you ought to give it back. And therefore, that is the legal quandary that we are in. That this money, the declaration by the High Court was that it was unconstitutional.
All right.
To the extent that it was collected without law. There can be no taxation without law. So why withholding the money? The government ought to find a way of dealing with that. It's not for me to advise them.
All right.
This meeting that has been referred to, there are structures within which to hold meetings. We have an institution created by law called the National Council for Administration of Justice, NCAJ. That is the institution where inter-branch conversation within government should take place. This idea of having cup of teas and parleys outside the rubric of the law is conduct really unsettling. We ought to respect the law. These are not personal offices. They are institutions of state and institutions of government.
All right.
The judiciary must be seen to be above board, and dalliance with the politicians ought to be, we ought to engage the politicians at an arm's length.
All right.
If we fail to inspire confidence, because right now I can tell you confidently that this country is sane only because of the judiciary.
All right.
If you were left to our elements with the politicians, the facts are out there. You know what this
All
will
right.
be.
And Senator, that housing levy, the unconstitutional housing levy, because the court declared it unconstitutional, it's not legal, was meant to fund affordable housing, you know? But then the question is, this housing project targets the hustler. You know, it's a hustler house. And the Kenya Kwanza regime has always been talking about hustler. So these houses go for about approximately 3-point-something million shillings. How can a real hustler afford this? And when I'm talking about a real hustler, you know the person I'm talking about. Not you and I, you know.
So who am I? Before I became a senator, by the way, I'm a true example of the bottom-up economic model we've been talking about. Because I've not been in Nairobi. I'm someone who just came from the village and here I am.
No, Senator, what I mean is right now...
What do you mean by a hustler?
Right.
Hustler is any hardworking person who can actually rise from whatever small thing they are doing to a very comfortable thing that is making them comfortable.
That is the picture.
Yes.
That is the picture that you're painting for us. But the
That's not a picture I'm painting.
The understanding, Senator, the understanding of what the hustler nation means to the common Mwananchi outside there, if you walk around the streets of Nairobi, back within, within the slum areas and within the Mjengo areas, they believe the hustler person is that mamambo. And that is not even the mamamboga, the Juakali person. You want to sell this house at a price of 3.2 million shillings. This is someone, and with the hard economic situation now, they are trying to, it's from hand to mouth. So how will this hustler afford this house?
First, a hustler is any hardworking person. It's not whatever you're painting. That's what you, as an individual, is painting. Me, as Senator Okenyuri, understands a hustler is any hardworking person. I've worked very hard, and I'm now reaping the fruits of my hard work. Even a mamamboga, who tells you mamambogas don't make money? They're working very hard, and as a result, they're making money. We have so many border riders who are owning houses out of circles they established and the big savings they are making there. So do not mislead the public that hustlers are people who just hang around there. Even any street hawker in this town
is
who's selling eggs is making money and is saving it towards something.
Is a hustler.
Yeah,
I don't...
But I think, Senator, the question is, in terms of resource income, in terms of income, let me call it income, in terms of making income, there are hustlers who make a hand-to-mouth income on daily basis. If we are considering these people for them to get a decent house, and yet the low-cost house costs us
around 3.2
million, how will they going to afford? Or are you saying that we're going to give them these houses freely and they will keep on paying 200, 500, 1,000 that they get on daily basis?
And that's,
you know, the concept is, who is able to make a lump sum amount of money equivalent to 3.2 million?
You see, that's
that
why
makes him afford that
That's
house.
why this levy is deducted depending on whatever you're earning. Personally, whatever deductions I contribute to the housing levy, I contribute 17,650
yes. Recently,
to the housing levy.
Senator, before you go away, recently when they were conducting public participation, they said if you are given the house on mortgage as a hustler, you're going to pay 28,000 per month, depending on the location of those houses.
Exactly.
Who is able to afford 28,000 per month on a house that you're going to own when you are a hustler and your income is hand to mouth? This is what we are saying.
And you know, Dr. Hassan, Senator, it's good Dr. Hassan has painted for you the picture. Let me just bring it back home. The lack of a better word, and I respect them very, very much, the house managers who come to work in your house. I'm just giving an example. So this house manager comes to work in your house. Maybe the least you can pay is probably 1,000 bob. Just an example. I'm not saying that is what probably if you have one, that's what you pay. 1,000 shillings, the highest. This house manager who comes to work in your house daily lives within the slum areas, the informal settlement. The price of kerosene has gone up. So I'm assuming this person is buying kerosene. 1,000 bob and that day. This 1,000 bob, it's supposed to buy kerosene. It's supposed to buy unga, the meal for the day. It's supposed to pay school fees. So my question, it goes back to the question that I was asking you. If this housing project is targeting the real hustler, and there's a certain amount this hustler is supposed to pay at the end of the month based on the picture that I've painted.
And by the way,
how is this hustler going to afford it?
The picture you're painting of an increased cost of living is not just happening to low-class people, it's cutting across, and it's been there even before. You should even be grateful this administration is already doing so much, not to dig deeper, but try to make it better for people. You are limiting your imagination to the issue of just ownership of houses. You do not want to look at the number of jobs.
My question
the
was
construction
based,
of the
my
houses
scenario, my example was based on my question.
To the thousands of young people. The other time I was in Busia, and I saw the number of young people who are participating in construction of the industrial park itself. Huge. That's what appeals to me, because we want to create jobs for many of the young people who are in this country. It's a ballooning population. That's the only way you can create an environment for them to defend themselves.
All right. Wakili?
Yeah.
I hear the senator argue Keynesian economics. Keynesian economics do projects, try to create work after a depressed state that we inherited from the past regime. Fair enough. We need to be strategic, Senator. If you look at Article 21 of the Constitution, that provision there uses the term it gives the inclination of long-term strategic planning with regards to Article 43. The realization in Article 21 is that we will not build houses in 5 years, in 10 years. Article 43 of the Constitution is intended to redress this wolverine capitalist market that we've had that has made a good number poor. For you to uplift the lot of the poor, those who are disadvantaged in this country, you are not going to do it by housing alone. You are not certainly going to do it within 5 years. Socioeconomic rights some aspects of rights that will need collective galvanization, and it will need mid-term and long-term efforts. So they, as politicians, and they certainly can get the best in terms of advice. South Africa is one destination that we can borrow from in terms of imagination and thought process. You can have the affordable housing scheme, but stagger it mid-term, long-term, and certainly do it in a way that you don't burden a certain generation.
All right. Let's, Dr. Hassan, I want us to move to the state of the economy. Where we are right now, because, you know, there's a story that we filed that aired here on KTN News about Kenyans being warned. You know, you have to dig deep into your pockets so that we can be able to pay our loans. As we are right now, how far can Kenyans be stretched?
I think Kenya is broke. And it has not come from us. It has come from Treasury. They said the government is broke. And definitely, you know, the Eurobond is also in question at the moment. But when you look at the status of the economy at the moment, our fuel is still high. Beside the fact that fuel in global fuel price has reduced, we are still on the highest end. Secondly, you see how the value of Kenya shilling is depreciating every day. Just today, it is around 165. And we know it is going to hit the 200 figure. That means then, as we know, Kenyans live on 3/4 of their products as an import product. That means you buy them with a hard currency, meaning then we will not be able to make, you know, we will not be able to run our day-to-day, you know, economic livelihood activities. And it looks like we are not trying to prioritize. In terms of the government priority, you will find every other person who is in Kenya Kwanza government refers the current outcry to the previous government. Although I always say, of course, our president was also in the previous government. Therefore, blames are not much to be considered. What I was thinking of is that if you have found a problem in the previous regime and you have taken the mantle now, you need to establish the extent of that problem and see how best you can reduce the burden on Kenyans to address that particular problem before you move into new issues. So the problem is that everything that has been done in the previous regime has been rubbished on and kept aside. New developmental projects have been initiated. On the other hand, our coffers are empty, and we are getting we are having a lot of debts. But again, I was telling people, if you have a lot of debts, you will find a way of clearing your debt other than taking more other debts. You don't clear debts with another debt.
All right.
And therefore, the government has concentrated on much of the previous issues as a blame game. Then they lacked priority for their current situation. And of course, looking at the global phenomenon where we are having crisis all over the world.
All right.
And if they have not considered that, and yet they have not prioritized their priorities on what is priority for them and what needs to be sorted out, we will keep on going into crisis.
All right. All right.
IMF has flagged us as that our currency will soon be like any other countries where their currencies will have no value at all in the market of any other country, and will not be able to buy anything with our currency.
All right, Senator, and you know, of course, you painted for us a picture of what you know, your party leader, who's the President William Ruto, has done, you know, in terms of creating jobs, and he's been talking about getting Kenyans jobs abroad. The young people are dear to his heart based on how he talks. But the question that Kenyans are asking, is the Kenya Kwanza regime thinking about us as Kenyans? Because today you wake up, of course, you've moved from the housing levy. We've already had a discussion about that. Prices of commodity are high. We're talking about now probably having toll station on major highways. The cost of fuel is high. The question is the Kenya Kwanza regime, under your party leader, thinking about Kenyans?
Let me ask you then, whom is it thinking about through when they're actually taking all these radical measures they are taking? Look at the issue of reforming from NHIF to the social health insurance scheme. That's preventive, unlike what we've been having, curative, where someone waits to get sick, then seeks medical attention. Whom is it touching? Isn't it ordinary people? This administration has prioritized the issue of pending bills, which is a big issue even in county governments. I can talk about counties because that's what we look at as the Senate. We have the pending bills evaluation committee that is being led by Edward Ouko, and I think they'll be closing in their submissions on next month, February, that is. That makes it easier if suppliers are paid on time. It makes it easier for people to trade with government. Whom is government then thinking about when they prioritize the issue of analyzing pending bills? If indeed they are genuine, they should be paid on time. Look at countries like Sweden and France. By paying pending bills on time, their citizens are able to trade with government. Who are those? Aren't those ordinary people?
So, Senator, how would you...
By the president negotiating, the president has had very many bilateral agreements with different countries abroad on exporting labor. Whom is he actually thinking about? When we bring these measures of the affordable housing that you're actually talking about here, whom is it touching?
Right. So, Senator,
because
in a minute,
look at the effect of affordable housing. We have very many students in technical institutions who are plumbers, who are masons, name all of them, who will be needed in some of these construction sites. Do you want to just say all those things which are being done by this administration don't touch on ordinary people?
Senator,
then whom are they touching on?
Senator, I've run out of time. I need to give Wakili a minute to wind up and a minute just to respond to this question in a minute.
There should be time for you to respond to this. Who are all these projects
that is why I need to be a neutral party. I am the voice of the voiceless, the voice of the society, the media, and that is why I channel that question to you. And without wasting time, Senator, how would you, in a minute, Senator, how would you describe the country's economy right now in a minute?
Doing very well.
All right, doing very well. Your closing remarks, Wakili.
Ballas Orban, political scientist, lawyer, lecturer, and an MP in Hungary, says that without a strategy, a modern nation is sure to be lost in an even darker, ever less differentiated conglomeration. We need to see strategic thinking from those in government. We need to feel and see their grand ideas materialize into beneficence for the citizens of the country. At rhetorical level, up here, you may harp and puff and talk of all the benefits that the Kenyan citizens are feeling, but so long as the dollar is tinkering towards the 200 shilling mark, petrol skyrockets, potholes are back with a fury on our roads, the cost of living is spiraling, all you say will be meaningless and will not be received well by the citizens. How I wish that we will get down from the high, lofty pedestals that we climb on as politicians and get off the tinted roses, spectacles that we don, and stop being impervious to reasons. The people of this country are hurting and they need redress. Thank you.
All right. Dr. Harun Hassan, leadership and governance expert. Asante sana for your time, and thank you for coming tonight here on KTN News.
Thing.
You need to say one thing in less than a minute. In less than a minute, I'm actually overrunning. In less than a minute.
I must say that we must face the reality. The government must know the reality. We shouldn't be sinking our head in the sand like the ostrich. We know there's a problem. The government should go back to the drawing board and set their priorities for Kenyans to.
All right.
The president needs more time.
The president needs more time.
Rome was not built in a day.
All right, Senator Asante Sana. Thank you, Dr. Harun Hassan, leadership and governance expert. Senator Esther Okenyuri, thank you. And of course, Wakili Advocate Evans Ogada, thank you. The gentleman and lady for your time. My name is Brenda Zedera. Did you enjoy the rest of your viewing? Good night.